green card. If you don't, red card, and the fighter get out. No. And if you want as well, we can also welcome you on stage if you want to discuss this specific topic. So really, I insist, it needs to be interactive, so feel free to speak out and share your thoughts.
All right, so I'm the first one to jump in the battlefield. So, and especially coming from the traditional gaming world, to me, Web3 or blockchain in general is not so much about the technology. It's more an ideology. It's more a radically different approach of sharing the value, redefining the value proposition with our community. So when we, and this is why it's been so hard for me to understand why there's been so much prejudice and so much negative feedback when some people started to shift there, because the very basic change is not so much in how we're building the games or what the type of experiences are, but the fact that as a player now you get to own your asset, which really radically changes the relationship between the developers and the game itself, and the gamers, which is now the game has to serve the assets, because the assets are in the hands of the players. And well, before we had kind of an almighty power. We could do anything, we could change anything, nothing was immutable. Now it's radically different. We have to be much more careful. And so that also comes with a massive benefit, which is that we build together, and this is really how we're doing it for Life Beyond, which is a fantastic journey, especially when you come from the AAA world where you spend 5, 6, 7 years behind closed doors developing stuff without any form of feedback. That you would not be able to do in Web3 anymore. So you would have to, but you would also benefit from onboarding your community very early on into the project.
So you would think it starts from an economic side that dribble down to a social aspect?
Again, I think the economics are not, they eventually matter, but I don't think that they're that important. It's more changing a whole relationship. Not so much from a financial standpoint, more into how we kind of spread the relationship between the different stakeholders. Well, before it was very top-down. This is the content we make, like it or not. Well, here we have an opportunity, because we have the proper incentives mechanism, especially they can be economics, but they can also be social, right? Social recognition and any form of utility that gives you a benefit. We can finally be together co-developing this thing, which was not real, which was more of a fantasy before than a reality.
Okay. And you, Jacob, what's your opinion here?
So in terms of gaming and Web3, I think that Web3 is important to gaming equally as much as gaming is important to Web3. And what I mean by that is Web3 gives us now the ability to gamify things that have otherwise not been gamified before, right? We can bring interactions and engagement into certain products in certain areas that weren't possible before. If you take our project, the cartoon series, I know every one of you has watched, let's say Game of Thrones, Jon Snow, right? You were watching, you're like, fuck, why didn't Jon Snow do that? Right? If I were Jon Snow, that's what I would have done. I would have done that, something differently, right? Well, Game 3 enables us to build a game, give you characters using dynamic NFTs. You can watch the series live. You can play as if you're that character. And you can see what your choice would have actually done if you were Jon Snow, right? So I think that in cartoons, TV series is just one aspect of this, right? It's also important for like video games and ownership and stuff like that, of course. And that's the natural evolution of Web3 with video games, right? It's naturally going to evolve. But the amazing thing with Web3 and gaming is that we can break the boundaries of what we can do creatively. And we can go into other areas where gaming right now doesn't exist. And by doing that, what we're going to do as an entire community, I know everyone in here is interested in Web3 because you're here, right? What we need to do is figure out how to get Web2 to embrace us and bring it to a wider market, right? And Web3 and gaming can definitely help us do that, in my opinion.
And Bilal, you have maybe a a stance that is a bit different from us because you're also on the investment side. So what's your opinion here and how projects also pitch these to investors?
Well, in Web3 gaming, for me, there is actually two things. There are like game that implements token gating, tokenomics, and change the relation between the participants and the game creators. And this is a good thing because it's kind of new, even though it's very similar. But the way people are going to interact with each other is kind of new and interesting because it's more related to the real life. The other aspect is, for example, everything related to user-generated content, where basically you have tokenomics or implementation that will help multiple people co-build a game. And I also think this is very interesting because it will, like the first part of Web3, change the way we kind of play and interact. The second, change the way we build games. And it's also very exciting to have games that are built by multiple players and not the same one, and brings a lot of diversity into the game in a continuous manner.
And okay, from all these point of views, if you do you have examples that are spearheading for you these aspects inside the ecosystem, except maybe your companies? Or and do you try to follow some specific trends, or do you think that nothing exists yet and we still have to build a lot?
Well, I think we still have to build a lot because it's very new. So the technology is not that mature. Thus, the onboarding is not that mature. And on top of that, the games take time to build. That's why I'm so interested in user-generated content, because I think it would speed up the production of the games. But right now, it's like if we take back to the title of the roundtable, it's a bit overhyped because, and you know, it's always the usual Gartner slope. You know, it's hype, slope of enlightenment. So, but we need that to create the inertia for people to build, to be interested, and to exchange.
But I really think that so it also addresses a lot of the issues that we've had in Web 2, and I can give you one that I think is a good illustration. So, in the traditional free-to-play business model, we have to bring in millions of players, and we're going to lose most of them. And only a few ones will monetize, and usually we end up focusing on what we call the whales. The point is that we're going to squeeze the whales as much as possible because we need to earn a revenue, we need to earn more revenue, which at some point also kind of pushes us to do some stuff that are ethically questionable. We use, and I've been driving this thing, so I can be enough embarrassed about this, but we use a lot of behavioral economics, and kind of tricks to get people to monetize more through the store. And one of the things that we're using all the time is what we call power creeping. So you had the sword, you bought this sword, and 3 months later we release a new sword that is more powerful because we need you to keep spending. In Web3, because of the immutable nature combined with the limited supply of items, we don't have to do this anymore. There was 1,000 sword. They are sold now. First, they can generate more revenue on the secondary market, which is also a healthy business model. Healthy for the one who purchased, healthy for the operator of the game. The second thing is that we don't have to release a new sword that is better. We can release a new sword that has the same type of characteristics because now we had a limited supply. So you could not just buy this one anymore. That's over. And so a new release comes with like a new type of content, or they could have just a different look, just a few different properties, but you don't have to basically wipe out all the former content like we've done it in MMOs for the past 20 years.
I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm also a bit afraid that Web3 gaming can turn into a pay-to-win ecosystem. So I mean, and that's what we can see. Usually, the higher you pay, the better performance you can get. And if you compare it to some very competitive games, there's no pay to win in that
Absolutely.
sense.
So first, there are two items here. The first one is that pay to win really matters when it's a PvP game, okay? And then you have this context of this concept of challenge, of adversity. But the second thing is that by definition, because there's no power creeping, and this is not about chasing the most powerful thing, but just, again, there was a limited supply, we push a new version of it, a new sword that is not more powerful than the previous one, then there's no pay to win mechanics, because we're not introducing something that makes you more powerful.
Why would you buy it then?
Well, you buy it, the only reason why you would buy it is because and you buy this one is because there's no more supply of the previous one.
So just
before we move on, I'd like to say I do agree that there is a barrier entry, but within the challenges of the NFT space, I don't think necessarily it's a technological thing with the main challenges of using NFTs in Web3. I think because of the hype and then essentially the NFT winter, I think our main challenge with NFTs and gaming is that we have to change the psychology of the buyer themselves, the market. Because right now, people have like this idea that you have to buy an NFT with the sole goal of making money when you sell it, right? And that's not necessarily what it has to be in gaming. So, okay, everyone raise your card when I ask you a question. And red or green, doesn't fucking matter right now. How many of you have bought a movie ticket or a concert ticket or a ticket to an event at least once or twice? Yeah. What was that ticket worth after the event or the movie was over? Why'd you buy it? You bought it for the experience of the event, right? And that's the direction we really need to go with NFTs within gaming itself, right? Because they can be utilized in so many different ways. It's not about just flipping and making money. And that's one of our barriers right now, is the psychological aspect.
Just first, I want to see a bit the opinion in the room. So regarding first the economic motive to enter a Web3 game, do you think it's the first motive right now, or come on, raise the cards. I want to see that.
What does red mean? It's no.
Red is no. Okay, so yeah, it's partially mixed, I would say, and regarding the fact that we need to onboard less financial-oriented people in the space, is that something you think it's necessary?
I think there is something else. I think we also need to increase the financial literacy of the people interacting with those games. Otherwise, they just think they're going to do it for the money, And I think we should be very lucid on two aspects. The first one is that blockchain is first an infrastructure layer. Okay, it brings the digital ownership, and basically that's kind of it. That's the first value proposition, and in gaming we should talk about digital ownership. Then the value associated to those ownership can fluctuate, but as much as my watch, as much as my shoes, is just life, and people need to remember that. And I think people don't remember that is because there are still a lot of people that are here for the financial incentive. And we see it, like traditional gamers are very reluctant yet to Web3. So it's first financial education about the real value proposition, and expect like some good games to be built on top of it.
If I may just sound like the old man in the room, we've watched this movie already. When free-to-play started to rise back then, let's say 10 years ago, we had exactly the same experience. I remember traveling and visiting a lot of Ubisoft studios where I was working and trying to evangelize this and being welcomed with tomatoes everywhere. And it's not so much that we changed the business model. It's actually not even so much that we educated the audience. It's that, as you said, we started to have really high quality experiences. So it took Clash of Clans by Supercell, it took League of Legends by Riot Games for people to stop caring so much about the business model, which was, oh, it's free to play, it must be a crappy game, and moving there and eventually just becoming extremely comfortable with the model, which is what is happening today, right? So I think we have to be very humble and realistic. Right now we have 3 million crypto players, which is obviously ridiculous compared to the 3 billion players out there. And what we haven't had so far is a lot of, or enough high quality experiences. There are a few ones, but they take a long time to build, you know, especially when we're talking about these really polished experiences. I think, for instance, of Shrapnel, that is, you know, one of the first game where, wow, okay, now it starts to go match a little bit with the standards of the traditional game industry. And people are starting to pay more attention. And of course, we'll have more and more of this because in comparison, as a reminder, because of the Web3 nature, we have been building most of our project, whether it's Sandbox or Dogme or Life Beyond, in an open development way. We have opened the kitchen. While we haven't waited for these projects to be completed, we have given access very early to these projects. So we need a few more years, I think, to be to, you know, and I would say like 2025, where we're finally at this time where we can bring the same level of standard, and now we can evangelize and push more.
So in a sense, it's about content and tech, from what I hear. So if we go back to the tech side, because I think it's pretty important here. We have all the blockchain techs which allow or not interoperability. We have Unity versus Unreal. These are topics that I personally don't really master, to be honest. But I'm glad to hear you about how the gaming tech can also impact the blockchain you use and how you design your game.
Well, I wanted to jump back on something that is related, but not exactly. I wanted to add something. I think that Web3 gaming has to do with the infrastructure because, well, let's put it this way. I think what we're doing with what we call Web3 game can be done without Web3, technically. I mean, when you're a Steam, you have one account for multiple games. There are some secondary markets. The technology brings efficiency. That's the first step in the secondary market, in the account creation. I forgot what I wanted to say then. No, I'm joking. And on the other part, it's related to content. And I think why people want to play Web3 games, again, what we call Web3 games, is more for the cultural aspects of taking part in the community and the cultural aspect of Web3. I think that's the driver, at least for me. That's the driver.
We have to, and I always get pushback when I say this, and it's very controversial, so I'm sorry. We have to really start controlling how we use the word community in the Web3 space, because people treat a community like it's a utility, and it's not, essentially, right? I've been in Facebook groups, communities, since 2006, right? So it's not necessarily that community is the most important thing that is the selling aspect in Web3.
Yeah, that would take a whole panel, I guess.
Yeah, okay, my fault. You can put up your red cards for me getting off topic.
Maybe to contradict a little bit, so for the sake of for the fun of the game, with Bilal, and really just slightly, when Bilal says we can do the same thing without Web3 technology, we can, but it's extremely challenging. So one example that I have is the permissionless nature of blockchain makes it so easy for any third party to build stuff on top of your experience. Okay, so for instance, on EVE Online, you can do it, which is not a Web3 game, but the developers, CCP, had to open and to build so many APIs to give you access to the code of the game and to be able to push stuff. Right now, with Web3, because the assets, and for some games, the logic runs on-chain, then anyone in a permissionless way, without getting the approval or any relationship with the original developer, can build stuff. So this is, to me, it's just that right now we haven't really, onboarded, and I think this is where also we need to work on as developers, is to promote, to create to facilitate for and as an ecosystem. And that's why we keep talking like with so many of you here about how we can collaborate, bring together some value, some financial value as well, some financial incentives to the Web3 player-run communities to start building stuff on top of these worlds. Because at the end of the day, and I kind of piggyback on the point that Bilal was bringing up about UGC, these worlds, that are eventually all kind of part of the open metaverse, they all need so much more content that we will ever be able to build.
No, yeah, that's for sure, and that's the basic essence of what you're building, what we're building at the Sandbox, and probably many other projects as well. In the audience, do you have any question maybe regarding what we were talking about? Yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
Right on, using tech.
Which one is it?
While not using tech.
Joey. So would you say that it takes a new generation in order to change the mindset regarding the gaming and Web3? Okay.
How long is a generation?
Yeah. 20 years?
We're doomed.
Now, what I mean is, do you think it's possible that we, like the old people, the dinosaurs who are used to old school gaming, do you think it needs the younger generation to understand the fact that digital assets become valuable, and because we're not used to that when we game?
But is
they already do. I mean, like, people that are playing Fortnite have been buying skins, and I don't play Fortnite. The first time I saw my brother playing Fortnite, I was like, what is this? And I didn't understand it.
Isn't that the new generation, like the people who play Fortnite?
I think it will take us like 10 years, but for my little brothers, it will take them 3 years maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm also really impressed by how the younger generation is degen, more than our millennials in a way. I think the people that are harder to convince today are the millennials and not Gen Z and not the youngest generation. So I'm extremely confident about this part.
It's also, if you build something fucking cool enough, people will come. It doesn't matter. Like, if it's cool enough and it takes a little bit of learning to experience that really cool thing, people will learn. They'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
you convinced?
No, I think the same thing. It's just that I was wondering, like, what the main thing would be, as in, if it's. I agree with the fact, like, the people who play Fortnite right now and Roblox, like, that's the first generation that's totally gonna understand the fact that digital items are a thing.
Did you? Are you familiar with CS:GO?
With?
Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike, yeah. But I've played that like 15 years ago.
I don't know if you watched the latest major, which happened in Paris 2 weeks ago, something like that. At the very end of the tournament, so Vitality, the French team, won, and one of the players opens a loot box in front of the whole audience inside the arena, and he got a rare stuff, which is very rare, and like the crowd explodes. It's like, whoa, oh shit, what the heck? And you know, like, it's actually worth much more than just a purple weapon or something like that. It actually has a value. So it's already there. It's just a question of change management and how we will allow these people to enter the scene, I believe. And
just to add something, it's also that this generation really understands that it's not because it's digital that it's not real. You know, it's so hard to explain that to people, and especially when I try to explain that to my parents, you know, they're like, but can you use it? Can you hold it? And I'm like, no, it's a whatever is digital for them is kind of not real. But for the younger generation, they have social friends that they never met in real life, but that they interact with on TikTok, on Instagram, and they are real friends to them. So I think now that we have kind of destroyed or broken, you know, this bridge, you know, this wall between, oh, this is digital, this is physical. Now people don't care so much. It's more about the value you give to this thing.
I'm just going to go back to the tech aspects.
Unity and real?
I mean, no, maybe not this
I think
one.
it's all about, we were saying that, it's all about standardization. Yeah. How can we make people co-build better experiences, faster experiences with more people interacting? And Unity or Unreal are kind of, on the rendering of the assets, the two major standards.
So you're right that we have, right now, we still have a technological breakthrough to figure out, which is creating a form of standard. And there are multiple initiatives. There is OMA, there is another, Mythical is driving something. So there are some attempts. So that's why right now, the fantasy of universal interoperability is just not happening. But I think we can also see interoperability as so many different ways. Utility interoperability is something. Like we're discussing some cool stuff with Dogami. We're discussing some cool stuff with Sandbox and with so many other partners that can bring. I have another very good example. Illuvium or Star Atlas would be considered as the main competitors of Life Beyond today. I was on the Star Atlas Twitter space a few weeks ago. We promoted Illuvium a few months ago because we actually provide utility to our community by doing so, and the Illuvium or the Star Atlas community benefits from this as well. So the point is that right now it's about building the network, and that can be through a form of interoperability, just not about indeed moving with your laser gun into a medieval world, which I agree, this is part of the fantasy that people are mocking all the time.
Jacob, on your side, with Asteroid Diner, is it something that you're exploring, interoperable stuff, or not really?
Not really at this moment. Not so much. I don't have a lot to say on that point.
So in the audience, do you really think interoperability is a thing, or for you it's just a minor feature that could bring a bit of benefits? What's the status?
I have an opinion on that, but it's not connected to Asteroid Diner. I can share that.
Sorry?
I said I have an opinion on it, but it's not connected with.
I just wanted to know what the audience thinks, so we can maybe exchange a bit and discuss, but apparently they...
I saw mostly greens.
Something's wrong? Are you taking my mic again?
What do you think about the USD standard of NVIDIA, Universal Scene Description? It's a 3D standard. Have you heard about it? Do you think it will work?
I feel very ignorant right now.
Yeah, same. Do you have more info?
I mean, it's a standard that is going to have because right now you have standards with the blockchain. Let's say you have an NFT and you can connect to different blockchains. But with 3D objects, you don't have standards. It's very difficult because the dot and the end of the name, you have so many things with Unity, with Unreal Engine, and NVIDIA has this thing called the Omniverse, I think, and they're building this .USD for Universal Scene Description. So, but...
I think I heard about it. Well, I think it's a good thing, again. Everything that makes people converge to facilitate integration, interactions, is definitely a great thing. I just want to come also on this question from Hannah. I don't want to ignore her. I don't have any specific answer. I just had an idea. We should create a charter, because that's really interesting what she says. And I think it's missing in game development. And Ben, do you want us to create a charter to how to implement ESG?
Absolutely, but
in game development?
we are going to announce more things about this. It's a very important topic to me. I think gaming is so. Especially with the younger generation, I think we need to come up with educational systems that are at the right level. Just being about lecturing is not very interesting and not very impactful. And we see that there is a whole, movement about decentralized education with the Open Campus, for instance, and their EDU token that launched a couple of weeks ago. Those are really opportunities, and Life Beyond is going to be all about this in particular. We're going to announce it pretty soon about putting you in this type of simulation where, we're not saying it publicly that it's an educational content, but you're just going to experience a whole world simulation where your actions have an impact. So I think in general, gaming is a good opportunity to deliver these messages because it's attractive, it's entertaining, and you learn things in this process.
And again, it comes back to how cool is your product? Not to be political, and I won't, but how many people in here have iPhones? So if you're concerned so much about the environment and you're using an iPhone to tweet about it, then I don't think that the Web3 space is necessarily the battle you should attack.
Alors, a part of me agree with you. I mean, we need to be very lucid, and indeed we should to question ourselves as well. But it's also a question of weighted average. I mean, it's more useful for me to have an iPhone to create more value. Is it naive to say that? But it's not because I have an iPhone and I don't want to change having an iPhone that those questions are not important. I think we should still always try to do more.
Of course, I
and there's still a lot of diversity to learn about the real world. So,
and also, I personally think that gaming is first about enjoying content, and I also try to take the evil side of the question. What if it's just to enjoy and have fun? And of course, you can get educated, you can learn, etc. But it's actually an added value of the experience. But first, it's just supposed to be fun.
You're right, but it doesn't take this responsibility away from us as developers. I can give you an example with Ubisoft, for instance. Ubisoft always had this mission to enrich people's lives. And so it might sound ridiculous when you play Assassin's Creed and that your job is, your role in this game is to assassinate people. But in Assassin's Creed, history is our playground. Whatever Assassin's Creed installment you played always takes place in a famous historical era where you meet historical characters. And all of this, and the work, historians are very involved in the development process of any Assassin's Creed game. So yes, we entertain you, but we always have in mind this responsibility to enrich a little bit your life.
Okay, pretty clear. We just have a few minutes left. With the recent news about Apple, Ubisoft, Epic Games entering the metaverse, the Web3, etc., do you think it's actually our redemption?
I think it's super important. I mean, anytime you have these massive players enter, yeah, they make mistakes and they get pushed back when they're really early on, but it will still take these massive companies like Apple to get involved, and their reach is so large. It's something that I think is very necessary, and it's great to see happening, actually, in my opinion.
But it's also a good lesson, I think, right? That we have to be careful with trend setting. 18 months ago, we were talking about the metaverse. Then I kept meeting people who said, hey, you should stop using the metaverse word. And I'm like, why? We've been working on this since 2018. Now we're going to have to call it a different name. And because, and all of a sudden it was about AI. And now I keep reading articles since yesterday about the metaverse is not done, the app with the entry of Vision Pro and all this. And the point again is, I think what we're building is really game-changing, and I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the industry. We should believe that the fundamentals are very, very solid, and be really confident. I think we're just very lucky that Apple made this move.
Bilal, a word of conclusion, or?
Yeah, I think technology cannot die. Technology improvements cannot die. It's just like a question of priorities. Generated AI came up, created a lot of user and new use cases, so it shed the light on them. Now it's Vision Pro with their innovation. It's just a question of innovation, and there will still be a lot in our space.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. It's time out, actually. So thank you for attending. That was great. And thanks to the fighters.
Thanks.